All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. We got to talk about the defense because what we saw against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday was a joke, right? I understand we're rolling out a bunch of young players. I understand we dealt with some injuries. I understand that we have no depth at specific positions. I get it completely. No Jarvis Brown-Lee. We're still trying to adjust with life post Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams in the fold. But when you put out a defensive performance like that, we have to start asking some hard questions here, right? And Connor Hughes has actually talked a lot about how the Jets could potentially be firing Steve Wilks after the season, right? Look, the Jets defense is not like absolutely like horrendous. Like if you look at the rankings, it's not like the Jets are 32, 32, 31, 30, 32, 29, 31 in like every important defensive statistics. Like there are middle of the road in certain areas. Again, you look at the state of the roster, it's not the best. We all understand that. But I think we've just seen a lot of disappointing performances this season. There's been some good ones. Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, right? Cleveland Browns. But when you think about upgrading at defensive coordinator coming into 2026, right? Aaron Glenn, 1 year under his belt. I think it's realistic to potentially upgrade there. Now, I will say this. I think if the Jets decide to hang on to Steve Wilks, I wouldn't be completely shocked because at the end of the day, they are running what Aaron Glenn wants to run. Because what we're seeing right now with this Jets team, it's not exactly what we've seen from Steve Wilks. It's very similar, but it's not the exact same on what he used to run in Carolina, right? And I want to reference Carolina because that's really where he had the most success. But I think maybe the first order of business, maybe the first plan of attack would be Aaron Glenn taking over play calling duties and having Steve Wilks almost in that advisory type of role, right? Giving Glenn options. But Glenn will be, because Glenn, obviously he called plays back with the Detroit Lions. There were moments where, Glenn's play calling really, really shined in Detroit. Was it perfect? No. But it is something that I would maybe want to see at some point this season before we just flat out fire Wilks. From that point, let's talk about three potential options with a bonus wild card. I think some of these coaches maybe make more sense than others here, but I think all four are definitely realistic. Let's start with the number one candidate that, again, in the event that we end the season, Aaron Glenn decides to make the decision, hey, I still want to be that CEO style of head coach, which, you look at the game management, Glenn has gotten better there. You look at, coaching challenges, Glenn's gotten better there. You look at clock management, Glenn has gotten better there. So there are signs of improvement with Aaron Glenn being that almost observer, right? The overseer of the operation on Sundays. So again, in the event that they decide to fire Steve Wilks, I think the first name on the list, assuming Cleveland keeps losing games, it's got to be Jim Schwartz. When you talk about someone who can slide in easily, right? 4 down linemen, very aggressive, bump and run man coverage. I mean, you look at what the Browns defense is doing and what they have been doing. It is very similar to what the Jets want to run, right? The success, the production, that's one thing, right? But you look at the development of players, you look at the young players that are having success there. You look at the identification of talent from that Browns defense, right? And of course, we do have to credit the front office and whatnot, but, it seems like when the Browns acquire a player, Carson Schlesinger, Tyson Campbell, Mason Graham, obviously Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett are some of the best in the game at their respective positions. But Jim Schwartz would ease, like him and Aaron Glenn, you kind of feel like they would blend really, really nicely, right? Again, both guys want to be aggressive. Both guys want to run, a lot of the same stuff out of their base package. Again, Schwartz has had a lot of production running a lot of man coverage. So I think that's just such an effortless fit. It's such an effortless fit, man. But here's the thing, right? Jim Schwartz, he's going to be in high demand. If you are a team that needs a defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz is probably on your short list, right? For literally every team. So that's the only hiccup, right? It's not a guarantee that you can, of course, lock him in, but he is the number one option, again, in the event that Wilks is fired. Second option here, might not excite a lot of people, but I think there is a realistic chance that it could potentially happen. It's Chris Harris, who's currently on the Jets staff. He's someone who is just totally respected around the league, someone who's paid his dues. He's spent a lot of time coaching in the National Football League. He actually interviewed to become the Jets defensive coordinator right before they hired Steve Wilks. Not to mention, he also interviewed for the Chicago Bears defensive coordinator job as well. So, I know it's not exciting, but Chris Harris, I would assume, would have a legitimate shot at least interviewing, right? He would at least be in consideration to become the Jets defensive coordinator in the event that Wilks is fired. There could be some pushback there, right? Because you're promoting someone from the same staff that is struggling. I get it, but sometimes this is really, really important in football. Sometimes the person that has the best or maybe the clearest picture on what is going wrong and how to fix it is the guy that's in the room, but he can't call the shots. Right, we've seen it over and over and over and over and over and over again with not only just new coordinators. Right, look at like when Anthony Lynn was fired in Detroit and they promoted from within with Ben Johnson. There were a lot of people that wanted that entire offensive staff fired. Lions said, nope, we like Ben Johnson because he has potential. I think another interesting option might not be the most, picture perfect. Glenn and this candidate would be on the same page all the time. But Patrick Graham, someone who's worked a lot in, odd man fronts. But he's also had a lot of success with 4-down linemen, right? You feel like Patrick Graham, he's such a veteran. He's one of those defensive coordinators that's similar to Greg Williams, where he can walk in the door, look at the roster and be like, you know what? I have my preferred system. I'll keep it in my head. But this team is built for X system, so we're going to run that. And he can go out and produce and have a lot of success. He's currently the DC of the Raiders. Will he be back with the Raiders? I'm not sure. I mean, who knows what is going on with the Raiders? Pete Carroll. We also what happened with Chip Kelly. What's going to happen at quarterback with Geno. The offensive line is in complete shambles. I don't know. If the Raiders just decide to clean house and Patrick Graham is out there, again, it might not be Glenn and Patrick Graham working, it's not like they have like 10 years of working experience. But again, if Glenn wants to continue to be that CEO style and just hire a defensive coordinator and say, hey, this is what we want out of our defense, Graham can look at the list and say, I got you. I can handle it. I like Patrick Graham a lot, right? He was, at one point, there was some talk that he could have earned the Giants head coaching spot. They ended up going in a different direction. But yeah, Patrick Graham has had a lot of success throughout the years in a bunch of different defensive systems with a bunch of different teams and a bunch of different players with strengths and weaknesses. So interesting option. Here is the wild card, right? Here is an interesting one. And I think Glenn would have to be, obviously he'd have to be open to the idea with this coach, but he would have to be able to fully commit. And it's Raheem Morris, right? If Raheem Morris gets fired, if he gets fired in Atlanta, which I think is realistic, quick side note, what's really weird is Raheem Morris's tenure in Atlanta it's so similar to when he was the coach with Tampa, right? Where they won a lot of games early, in year one. Year two comes up, lots of expectations, and they are just falling apart. I think Morris ended up getting fired in year three, but regardless, if Morris is let go and the Falcons decide to go in a different direction, that's a tough job too, by the way. No first round pick. It's going to the Rams. I think right now, before the Kirk Cousins release, I'm going to assume Cousins gets released, they have like $6 million in cap space. So it's, you got Carolina on the up and up. It's just a tough spot, I think. And Raheem Morris is just tough spot for a rebuild. And I just don't know. I mean, they were just blown out yesterday against Seattle. I just don't know if he can make it to 2026. So in the event that he's out there, it could be an interesting option because Raheem, say what you want about Raheem Morris, is one of these guys that you kind of feel like he fits the cliche term of great coordinator, not a good head coach. I mean, look at what Josh McDaniels was with the Raiders. Look at what he's doing now with the Patriots. Some guys are just built to be coordinators. I'm not saying that Raheem Morris can't turn it around, but again, in the event that he's out there and fired, I think the Jets should take a look, right? He was a top 5 defensive coordinator with the Rams. He's been around for a long time, New Jersey native. Here's the thing with Raheem. Multiple defense, right? You look at that Falcons unit, they're not running the same exact style that they did, because Jeff Ulbricht's there. They're not running that same like solid type of defense. There's, a portion of that in this defense, but you're seeing, 3-man fronts, 4-man fronts. You're seeing a lot of different things. You're seeing a lot of changes. And I think Raheem Morris would be an innovative hire, right? You kind of feel like Raheem Morris. I was going to use a quote from Chris Johnson when he hired Adam Gase, right? Coaching to where football's going. But Raheem Morris coaches defensive football in the modern era, right? He is not afraid to switch things up. He's not afraid to utilize a lot of different players, throw out a bunch of different looks. I mean, his MO has always kind of been, he's from the Tony Dungy tree. His MO has always been like Tampa 2, mainly zone coverage. So, on the surface, it's like, okay, the Raheem Morris defense with the Aaron Glenn defense, maybe there could be some clashes there with just overall philosophy. But if you kind of spin it and look at it like optimistically, like, hey, if you get Glenn and Morris in the same room to just talk defensive football and to almost like upgrade or like evolve Aaron Glenn's current defense, or like have Glenn's defense but with some twists and have Morris call the defense, I think that could be pretty interesting. Again, even if it's not a perfect 1-to-1, like, okay, this is exactly what I want, from Glenn's perspective. So just something to think about there. Again, Raheem Morris, Patrick Graham, Chris Harris, and Jim Schwartz. Out of the 4, Jim Schwartz, number 1 target. But like I said at the start, it wouldn't shock me if the Jets decide to keep Wilks. I mean, let's face it, right? The first go round with Saleh and Ulbrich, there were so many people saying Ulbrich deserves to be fired immediately. The Jets are the worst defense in football. But year 2 hit, they added more players that fit the system, and all of a sudden the Jets defense exploded onto the scene. And yes, the Jets do have a talent issue. They have a depth issue. You talk about consistently being able to stop the run, right? Not just one-off games here and there. Consistently. I don't care who we're playing. Do we have the ability to shut the opposing team down? No, they will not reach 100 rushing yards. No, we don't have that. Again, occasionally, yeah. A game here or there, yeah. But not consistently. So I don't want to look at the defense and say, oh, Steve Wilks is terrible. Get him out, throw in anybody, and the defense is amazing. Obviously, that's not the case. Obviously, it's not the case. And as with, schemes in the NFL, you add players, scheme gets better, right? Production goes up. I don't care what system you're running. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. But after yesterday's performance where we couldn't rush the passer, couldn't stop the run, couldn't tackle, couldn't cover, linebackers were looking lost in coverage, which is not the first time we've seen that this season. It looked like they were asleep defensively. Almost like we didn't even know we had a game. And then team officials are waking up the defensive players at 11:30 a.m. saying, hey, we have a game at 1. Get dressed. Get to the stadium. Suit it up, right? We got to roll. That's what it looked like, right? Down 14-0 in a blink of an eye. And it wasn't just some 45-yard pass interference call from Miami. That's how they lucked into the red zone. No, they went right down the field. Right down the field. We talked about it in the preview video, right? We all knew what the Miami Dolphins' offensive game plan was going to be. And it looked like the Jets had no idea that it was coming. No, wait, Achane getting the ball? Who would have thought that? I couldn't believe it watching it. Could not believe it. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.